Ooh, sorry, just auditioning for the BBC. Hello there. Now, the former Immigration Minister Robert Jenryck could never have said this just a few short months ago. He'd have been sacked or even worse. In an article for The Telegraph, the former Immigration Minister Robert Jenryck, who resigned last week because the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak was not doing enough to curb legal and illegal immigration, has come out and said that integration is impossible if you let in over 1.2 million new people, as we have done over the last 2 years. He writes, and I would add that it is doubly hard to integrate those within that 1.2 million who are intent on never integrating and in fact are demanding that we integrate with them and convert to their way of life. And we can see that gathering in pace all around us, can't we? And for those that are here on that basis, any benefits derived from their presence flow only one way, to the detriment of the rest of us. Anyone saying that there are too many to integrate more than 2 or 3 months ago would have been cancelled. The lefty open borders loonies would have been all over him and the press would have torn him a new one. How quickly things are changing. What was unsayable and undebatable in polite society so recently has very fast become mainstream discourse. And about time too. The previous cancel culture-led silence on the issue of migration was used as tacit approval to open the UK borders ever wider. The public daren't speak out, so government cynically used that silence to keep the students and the cheap labour plus their dependents coming in. And our betters thought they had won, and could now just use the border force as a welcome mat. But 750,000 net was a number too far. When that revised ONS figure for net immigration was quietly inserted into the latest migration report, everyone was stung into paying attention and speaking out. Now, Jenryck wanted to go much further in reducing net migration than the PM himself and the wets in his cabinet do. And as Jenryck says, Brexit gave us back the levers of power with which to address this burgeoning problem. But no Tory government has thus far been willing to even touch those levers, let alone adjust them. It's like they're terrified of offending someone, or terrified of defying someone or something. The entire push in North America, Europe and the UK is to welcome as many people as we can into the country as quickly as we can, even at the expense of social cohesion and potential unrest. In fact, those issues appear to be very low on the list of concerns for our establishment. And that begs the obvious question, why all these people? And the answer has nothing to do with making life for the ordinary citizen of the UK any better. In fact, I would observe that it is having the opposite effect. Those that come here get a great deal, while ordinary Brits find it harder and harder to afford the rent or mortgage or to get a GP appointment in a timely manner. The schools are full, wages get undercut, taxes go up to pay for it all. You know the score. Then we get shouted at that not allowing all these people in means we won't have enough doctors and nurses and the like. Well, we have already let millions in, and guess what? We still don't have a sufficient number of doctors, nurses and carers. In fact, I would say from what I've seen across social media, we have far fewer of them. Something that begs another question. What work are these people doing? And I dread to think what the answer probably is. Now, in his Telegraph piece, Jenryck said that centre-right parties across Europe have a stark choice. Deal with immigration now or face voters' red-hot fury at the ballot box. But the only thing we get from politicians is that they'll do something soon. There are plans. We'll try this next softly approach before we do anything substantial that might work. They tinker about the edges trying to look busy while signally failing the country. The international system and its law is now the paramount force over the developed world. That's right. Although the UK can make any law it likes, Parliament is sovereign. Those who hold the real levers of power will not allow that sovereign power to be exercised. Their internationalist agenda is controlling what happens in the UK. Now, Robert Jenryck points out that in May this year, Richard Eakins, Professor of Law and Constitutional Government in the University of Oxford, wrote a piece for the think tank Policy Exchange about the power that the European Courts of Human Rights have to order the UK not to deport people, for example, by using Rule 39 orders. It turns out that this rule was not part of the original European Convention on Human Rights, but has been introduced by judges and morphed to become stronger over time. Professor Eakins said that its basis in law is very shaky at best. He says there is a strong argument that the UK is under no obligation to follow those Rule 39 orders. In fact, they're not orders, they're recommendations or something that should be done, not must be done. Yes, we are obliged under international law to obey the final court rulings of the ECHR courts, but not its interim suggestions, says the professor. But there is a thing called customary international law. Think public footpaths across private land on an international scale, where if a sufficient number of people do something for long enough, it becomes international law through custom. So the more we obey international customs, the more force they get by the day until they become cast iron law, unable to be changed. And obeying laws that are not actually laws is one way of getting there. So the longer our borders remain open, you get the idea. Enforce your rights to protect your country or lose them. And the Western world, especially in Europe, is losing those rights because it refuses to enforce them for fear of upsetting someone. We must work with our friends and partners, wail the woke liberal wets as the French send us another dozen boatloads, despite us sending them lots of money. Now, as I and many who believe in the UK and its right to maintain our British way of life have been pointing out, we can only do that if we leave such august bodies as the Council of Europe and its European Convention on Human Rights, something that was drafted to protect basic human rights, but has been transformed into a set of laws or quasi-laws that are designed now to help the United Nations redistribute people and money about the planet. And in his piece, Jenryck says, clearly, for the policy to work, we need individuals removed at scale and within days of illegally stepping onto our shores. Anything less than this and the boats will keep coming. Controlling our borders would, of course, be far more straightforward if we extricated ourselves from the complex web of international frameworks that have taken on near mythical status within government. A clear statement of the obvious. But I will point out that it's not just the small boats. GB News recently did an exposé showing that lorries and ferries still play a big role here. However, the biggest problem we have is still the huge levels of legal migration. And for the PM to crow that reducing that number from over 700,000 down to under 400,000 is a success just shows how far into the book 1984 and its doublespeak we really are.